Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. Welcome to this session, which is actually a series of three lectures which are going to end today. And this series relates to common misconceptions about Islam. We have seen some misconceptions earlier on regarding gender issues and regarding political and militant issues. And today we are going to discuss two very prominent misconceptions which relate to fine arts or the relationship of fine arts with Islam and how it views fine arts. As far as the two misconceptions are concerned, we'll be discussing music and songs. And the other thing that will be discussed would relate to portraits and picture making. Both of these are very professional skills and they are very fine, I would say, skills which people acquire and they practice. And the question which, of course, arises in the minds of such artists, musicians, and song players is whether they are doing something which is disallowed by religion or not. And many a time we find people who are very, very cautious in their lives, but who have these professions, which, of course, have parts of these fine arts installed in them in some form or the other, and they always feel guilty whether they are doing something wrong or not. So we will take a look at how Islam views portraits and pictures and how Islam views music and song, because these are two areas in which generally people think that Islam has a very, very stringent attitude, very harsh attitude. It regards them to be forgiven per se. And our general view in this regard is that we should not indulge in anything which is even close to music or sing, and at the same time also we should not make pictures, and we should also not indulge in any sort of photography, which includes sculpture as well. So the first thing that we have to understand here is that there is not a single verse in the Quran which actually has any such ring of prohibition regarding fine arts. These fine arts, as far as they themselves per se are concerned, they are an expression of human art, they are an expression of creativity. And the only thing which Islam has to say in this regard, if I sum up the teachings, is that anything which is vulgar, anything which is against basic beliefs like monotheism, it has to be avoided at all cost. And whether this relates to fine arts or it relates to any other field, this is something which is true for all fields. But in particular, if the content of what you are singing or praying or maybe praising or maybe doing a sculpture, if the content is such that it portrays any form of polytheistic tendencies or it relates to any form of vulgarity, obviously that is something which should be abstained from. And as I said, this abstention is not just in these spheres, but anywhere these elements are found. So first, let us take a look at the prohibition or the general misconceived prohibition of songs and music. So let me first start off by saying that as far as the Quran is concerned, it is actually has praised Prophet David for singing on the harp. It has praised him vis-a-vis the fact that he is someone who would sing the hymns of the Almighty and he would play the harp. And let me just cite before you how the Quran has praised his endeavor. The Quran says in Surah Anbiya, verse number 79, وَسَخَّرْنَا مَعَ دَاوُودَ الْجِبَالَ يُسَبِّحْنَ وَالطَّيْرَ وَكُنَّا فَاعِلِينَ. And we caused the mountains and the birds to join with David in singing our praise. And all these things could have been done only by us. So it's like praising someone for something that is done. And as far as the Quran is concerned, this is something that you will find clearly mentioned. And if you refer to what David would sing on his harp, on his as hymns, I would like to cite a few passages from the Psalms of David, which of course see how beautifully he would word his compositions and how these compositions actually were divinely revealed to him, and he sung them on his harp. So, displayed before you some of the Psalms verses taken from Psalm 95, 96, and 144. So, the first of them is, "Come, let us sing for joy to the Lord. Let us shout aloud to the rock of our salvation. Sing to the Lord a new song. Sing to the Lord all the earth." And then Psalm 144, verse 9, it says, "I will sing a new song to you. O God, on the 10-stringed lyre, I will make music to you. So, praying to God in a manner that you sing before Him, you sing His praises, you chant out His praises, is something which was done by David on his harp, and which the Quran has actually praised. So, not only don't we find any prohibition of music anywhere in the Quran, on the contrary, what we do find is the Prophet David being praised for this endeavor. So clearly, we can see that as far as the prohibition of music is concerned, there is no such thing mentioned in the Quran. In fact, as I said, positively singing by a prophet himself is something which is praiseworthy and has been expressed as a praise by the Quran. So the question is that if this is so, then why is it that it is the general perception is that music and singing are prohibited? For this, we need to understand that there are certain narratives of the Prophet in which he has said to have said that he has come to break these musical instruments. And this actually shows that there is something that we need to consider, that why would the Prophet say that he has come to break and shatter these musical instruments? So if we study the times of the Prophet and we study how things went about in his own times and the gatherings and assemblies of entertainment and amusement, we will find that most musical gatherings were punctuated with vulgarity and vulgar dances, and it was basically this use of music which was rampant. So music was not just sung in a way that it should be composed in of course, verses or in a content which is pleaseworthy or free of vulgarity. But in most cases, it would be sung in songs in which people, in gatherings in which people would drink themselves and inebriate themselves, and then they'd of course indulge in vulgarity. So basically, it was this misuse of music that the Prophet was pointing out, that if this is something, then I have come to break such musical instruments. So instead of understanding that this prohibition actually related to the negative or the improper use of musical instruments or music, people thought that, well, music perhaps has been totally prohibited by these words of the Prophet, whereas this is not the case. So, in order to even understand further how these musical gatherings progressed in the times of the Prophet and how they actually went forward in most occasions, it would be very pertinent to take a look at a narrative which is recorded in the Al-Jami al-Sahih of Imam Bukhari. I'm just going to cite that narrative before you. But let me also point out that as far as musical gatherings are concerned and these uh, entertainment assemblies are concerned, in the times of the Prophet and in the pagan era, the amusement that people were generally aware of was the dancing and singing of songstresses, and punctuated, as I said, with a lot of alcohol and drinking and with vulgar dances. So this is a narrative which is found in Bukhari, and it seems to show, it will actually show how the Prophet's own uncle Hamza was drunk at one time, and he was witnessing a particular dance gathering, and he was totally inebriated with alcohol, and how Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, who had gone and to see him to fetch some of his camels which were supposed to be with him, how it portrays this whole situation. So let me just read out this narrative before you. This narrative is found in Al-Jami al-Sahih of Imam Bukhari, and it gives us a very clear picture of what these musical gatherings would be about in the times of Prophet. So Hussein ibn Ali, who is the son of Ali radiallahu anhu, he says that he reports from his father, and his father said, from among the spoils of Badr, a she camel was given to me as my share. So we immediately know that this narrative is the post Badr narrative. It is something which relates to Medina. So this is not even a Meccan narrative. It portrays a situation and an event which took place in Medina, because the Battle of Badr is under question, and we know that from the spoils of the War of Badr, as Ali has just said here, that a she camel was given to him as a share. So besides her, the Prophet also gave me another she camel from the games of Khums. When my marriage was decided with Fatima, the daughter of the Prophet, I made a deal with the goldsmith belonging to the tribe of Kainuqa, that he would go with me to bring a special type of grass by loading it on the camels. By selling this grass to the goldsmiths, I wanted to throw my walima. So clearly, you can see that as far as Ali is concerned, he was given two camels as a share, and he wanted to throw his walima. And the way he would do so would be that he would bring some grass. This would fetch him some money. It was slightly expensive, and that grass would be loaded on those camels, and he would be able to go and sell that grass in the market. So he says that by selling this grass to the goldsmith, I wanted to throw my walima. For this, I arranged for ropes and pack saddle for my she camels. These camels were sitting in the house of a person from the Ansar tribe. After gathering these things, I went to the camels. I saw that someone had chopped off their humps and taken out their livers by cutting open their stomachs. So, to his dismay, Ali, instead of finding his camels there, because it apparently seems that he had stationed these camels in the house of a person from the Ansar tribe. Obviously, it seems that he might not have had enough space himself to keep those camels. So, he requested a person from the Ansar that you please hold safe my camels until I am able to fetch them back. And lo and behold, when one day he was in need for them because he wanted that grass to be cut and loaded on these she camels so that he can go and sell that grass to the market. When he went to that house, he found that their humps had been chopped off and the livers from the stomachs had been taken out. So he was shocked, obviously. So now let's go on what he says. So he says that I could not restrain my tears at this situation. I asked people, who is responsible for this? They replied, Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib. So he is the Prophet's, his uncle. So when he asked that who is responsible for this, people said that Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib is the person who had chopped off the humps of these camels. And they further went on to say, he is drinking liquor in this house along with many people of the Ansar. A songstress is also present there along with his friends. What happened was that when she sang the following words, Hamza, get up and slay these robust she camels. He immediately pounced on them with a sword and chopped off their humps and took out their livers by slicing open their stomachs. So clearly, we see that in the times of Medina, after the Battle of Badr, such was the situation or the circumstance of a gathering that we can see that no one else than the Prophet's uncle himself, Hamza ibn Muttalib, he was totally inebriated, intoxicated with alcohol, and he was singing, he was hearing the song that was being played by these or sung by these songstresses. And when these songstresses or these singers, when they reached a particular stanza in which it is said that Hamza, get up and slay these camels. So this was actually part of that song. And Hamza, physically, when hearing this song, got so excited out of that inebriation that he went and chopped off the humps of those camels, and he actually sliced open their stomachs and cut out their livers. So this is a portrayal of what used to happen in those times. And whenever people would indulge in these assemblies, in these gatherings, it was rampant with alcohol. It was rampant with vulgar content and vulgar music. Of course, vulgar music here refers to the vulgar content of the songs that would be played. So we can now make this inference that as far as music is concerned, as far as singing is concerned, the point of concern basically is regarding the use and the regarding of the nature of this music and these songs. This music and these songs, as far as they are concerned, if they relate to any vulgarity, if they contribute to any vulgarity, if they have a content which pertains to vulgarity, then this is something that would not sit well, and this would obviously be disliked by anyone. But if there is any positive use of music and songs, and as I will cite you before you some hadiths which are not very well known, you will see that how the Prophet even listened to music and songs, and these narratives are recorded by very authentic hadith books, and they actually show that once again it has been a case of gross misinterpretation. The Prophet himself would like, or he would not discourage people from singing or even playing songs. And let's take a look at some of this content. So we find this narrative which is recorded in Al-Bukhari, in his Al-Jami al-Sahih. It says that Urwa reports from Aisha, The Prophet once came over to me. Of course, Aisha is telling people that the Prophet came over to to her. On this occasion, two slave girls were singing the songs related to the Battle of Boas. So this is a battle that took place before the advent of the Prophet, and it was a very bloody battle fought. So he lay down on a bed and turned himself to the other side. In the meantime, Abu Bakr came along and scolded me for what was going on and said, "Why these devilish musical instruments in the presence of the Prophet?" Now the Prophet turned and said, "Leave them alone and let them sing." When Abu Bakr got involved in some work, I gestured towards these songstresses to go, so they went away, and this was the day of Eid. So clearly, you can see that on the day of Eid, the Prophet himself was at Aisha's house, and there were two girls who were singing songs and playing music. And when Abu Bakr, who of course was the father of Aisha, he entered her house and he saw that these girls were playing music or singing music and playing songs. He was horrified and he said that what is going on? Why these devilish instruments are being played? And so the Prophet, as the narrative said, he says that he had turned to one side, he was resting. But when Abu Bakr came and scolded Aisha for this, he turned his side to one side and he faced Abu Bakr and said that let them sing. Why are you not allowing them to sing? Don't stop them from singing. Don't stop them from singing. And that is how things went on. And Aisha, taking cue that his father might get further annoyed, well, when he had left, he got involved in some work. He just signaled to those songstresses that you might leave from this place. And as the narrative itself specifies, that it was the day of Eid. So on the day of Eid, these girls were singing, and the Prophet not only did not have any negative comment, he in fact stopped Abu Bakr when he came in and tried to stop them. So you see, parallel to the content that we negatively hear regarding the prohibition of music, here we find this positive aspect as well. And this actually shows that it is basically the use of music or songs that is under question. It is not the prohibition per se of something, it is the misuse of something that is under question. Let me also bring out some more material before you. This again is recorded by Imam Bukhari in his Al Jami Sahih. Rabi bint Mu'awwiz said, "When I departed as a bride to my husband's house, the Prophet came over to me and sat on my bedding the way you are sitting on it." So she was describing how the Prophet was sitting right across her on the bed, the same bed that she was sitting. So at this time, our slave girls were singing an elegy to the martyrs of Badr on a small tambourine. So tambourine is something we know is a musical instrument. On this occasion, one of the slave girls, while singing, said the words, "Present amongst us is the Prophet who knows what is going to happen in the future." At this, the Prophet said, do not say this, but sing what you were singing before. So once again, you find that that a slave girl singing, and this song actually related to a certain incident, and in that particular portrayal, they said something which venerated the Prophet or elevated the Prophet too much, and the Prophet did not like it. So he said that because the words were present among us is the Prophet who knows what is going to happen in the future. And the Prophet said, "Well, this is not true. So you just leave out these words and sing what you were singing before. Sing whatever you were singing before. Just leave out these lines because this is not true. I am not a future. I'm not a fortune teller. I cannot tell what the future is. So better omit these words." So here again, viewers, you can see that Prophet, he views music to be something that was being sung before him. The tambourine, which is called a daf in Arabic and also in some other languages. So it is, in fact, because of this narrative that there are some scholars who think that only a daf or a tambourine should be allowed. Now the question arises is that why should the tambourine be only allowed when this is the situation that basically it is the content that the Prophet was objecting, not the instrument. So the content was something that was that was unjustifiable, and that is what he said. The Prophet just said that change these words and sing what you were singing before. So there is absolutely no justification on the basis of the narrative that people think that only if you have to sing, you should sing with a tambourine, because the tambourine is just adding flavor to the song. And the Prophet was not commenting on the tambourine, he was actually commenting on the content of the song. So whether it's a tambourine or it's a flute or any other instrument, it is something that can, of course, be played. And as the Prophet clearly said, that you should just watch over the content, but it is fine if you sing if the content is okay. Let me give you a third example, and this is also recorded by Imam Bukhari in his Al Jami al Sahih. So this is reported by Anas ibn Malik. So Anas reported that the Prophet had a camel driver called Anjasha, and he had a very melodious voice. In one journey, the Prophet said to him, "Sing slowly, O Anjasha, lest you might break these delicate crystals." And Qatada clarified. Qatada is a tabi. So he's clarifying Anas's narrative that Qatada said that this refers to delicate women. So apparently, the camel driver was carrying women, and Anjasha was singing a melodious song. And of course, this was meant for the camels. This camel singing is something that is often done in Arabia and used to be done for the camels to flow in a way, to run in a way that would be very smooth. So these camel drivers would sing these songs to these camels. So on this occasion, when Anjasha was singing a song, and as a result of that singing, the camels started to run faster. The Prophet remarked, "Well, don't sing in such a melodious voice, because if they are going to run fast, they might drop out the load that they are carrying, the women that they are carrying, and they are called as delicate pearls by the Prophet. That look at them. That if you make these camels run faster, they might drop off the women that they are carrying." Again, it's not that the Prophet stopped Anjasha from singing. All that he said was that, well, you have to sing in a way that you don't make those camels run haywire. So, viewers, you can clearly see that the content that is alternative to the content that is generally portrayed and brought before us, it clearly shows that it is something of a absolute anomaly, that the Prophet regarded music or singing to be prohibited. Neither did the Prophet nor prior to him the Quran ever did so. And the Quran, as we have just seen, has cited Prophet David, that he would sing these hymns on the harp. And we have seen some of these hymns as well, how purely they convey these emotions. And also, the Quran has praised them. And as far as the negative content regarding the prohibition of music is concerned, clearly this is something which can easily be understood in the wake of the narrative that we have just discussed, in which Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib, he was drunk and inebriated, and the nature of such gatherings becomes evident, that music and songs in some situations were played or they were sung in a way that it was not a very pleasant situation. People would get drunk, and at the same time, vulgarity would prevail. And on the other hand, we also have this content in which the Prophet praised and encouraged people on the one hand, and never stopped them. Remember, these were girls or women who were singing, and Anjasha, of course, was a camel driver. So there's some other content as well which can be looked up, but I've just chosen these three examples to tell you how also positively the Prophet viewed things in this regard. The Quran, as I said earlier on, has never ever expressed any dislike for any such thing. So we can sum up this whole situation, this whole issue, by saying that if vulgarity if music or the content of the song that is being sung has some vulgarity in it, or of course if it has some element of polytheistic composition in it, there are songs which are polytheistic in nature, or in any way they are against monotheism, then of course they should not be sung. Other than that, whether it's music being played or whether it's a song being sung, Islam has no objection towards them. Now, let us move on to the next topic that we are going to discuss, and this relates to pictures and portraits. Now, the general fatwa, the general edict in this regard, also is very similar to the one that we have just witnessed regarding the prohibition of music and songs. And that is that people say, or religious scholars, in fact, say that we are not allowed to make the pictures of living beings. We can make the pictures of non-living beings, but if we are to make pictures of living beings, then we would be punished severely by God, because we are trying to imitate God, God's creation, because He can only create living beings, and if we try to create the images of living being, then this would be like imitating God, and this is something which will earn the wrath of God and ultimately his punishment. And therefore, no person is allowed in Islam to make pictures or draw them or in any way make them. And of course, cameras and the likes would also come under this. So now, once again, we are faced with a very, very similar scenario. Once again, not only is there's nothing against picture and portrait making in the Quran, we find that Solomon, King Solomon, who made the temple, he is being praised for what he did. For we know that when he built the temple, there were sculptures placed there, there were portraits and things drawn on the walls, and the Quran has actually praised Solomon for this. Let us look at how the Quran has commented on this endeavor of Solomon. So this is verse 13 of Surah number 34. It says, "Ya'maluna lahu ma yasha min mahariba wa tamasil wa jifanin kal jawab wa qudur rasiyat. I'malu ala Dawood ash-shukra wa qalilum min ibadiy ash-shakur." They made for him whatever he pleased. So they is refers to the jinn who were in control of Solomon. So when he was building the temple, we know that he employed the jinn to construct that temple. And so this pronoun is actually referring to them, because in the context, it is they who are being discussed. So they made for him whatever he pleased. And what did they build? Shrines in tamasil and basins as large as water troughs and built in cauldrons. So these shrines and these tamasil, the tamasils are these pictures and portraits, which you can clearly see. We said, "Act with gratitude, house of David. Yet few of my servants are truly thankful." So David, of course, is the father of Solomon, and it is house of David, of course, refers to David and Solomon taken as one, and they are being praised for this. So when the jinn would make these tamasil, which are called tamasil, which of course are portrait and sculptures, they are being praised for this act. And if we look at the Old Testament and how Solomon himself used these effects to decorate the temple, let us see how it did so. So this is Kings 1, and this is chapter number 6, verses 23 to 29. It says, "In the inner sanctuary, he made a pair of cherubim of olive wood, each 10 cubits high. One wing of the first. So cherubim is, of course, an angel, is a living being that resembles an angel. So each 10 cubits high. One wing of the first cherub was 5 cubits long, and the other wing 5 cubits. 10 cubits from wingtip to wingtip. The second cherub also measured 10 cubits, for the two cherubim were identical in size and shape. The height of each cherub was 10 cubits. He placed the cherubim inside the innermost room of the temple, with their wings spread out. The wing of one cherub touched one wall, while the wing of the other touched the other wall, and their wings touched each other in the middle of the room. He overlaid the cherubim with gold." So cherubim is basically the plural of cherub, and cherub, as I said, is the portrait of an angel. On the walls, and of course the sculpture as well. On the walls all around the temple, in both the inner and outer rooms, he carved cherubim, palm trees, and open flowers. So you can see that these pictures of the angels, where they were etched and carved on the walls of the temple. And then in the same thing, which is also mentioned in 1 Kings with chapter number 7, 27 and 28 verses, he also made 10 movable stands of bronze. Each was 4 cubits long, 4 wide and 3 high. This is how the stands were made. They had side panels, each attached to the uprights. And then Hezekiel chapter 41, verses 19 to 21, it says, "The face of a man toward the palm tree on one side, and the face of a lion toward the palm tree on the other side." So they were all carved around the whole temple. So you see, it was a living being. I mean, they were living beings, of course. Lions are living beings, a palm tree, and a person, of course, is a living being. So they are being etched and they are being carved out on the walls of the temple. From the floor to the area above the entrance, cherubim and palm trees were carved on the wall of the outer sanctuary. The outer sanctuary had a rectangular door frame at and the one at the front of the most holy place was similar. So you can see, viewers, that if you look at the Old Testament, you'll find that Solomon was making pictures and portraits and sculptures, all of these three things, and he was decorating the temple with these things. And we have just seen how the Prophet Solomon's endeavor was praised by the Quran. And had there been any sort of negativity about it, he would not have been discussed in the Quran in this way. Let me just first, once again, point you to the words that we have seen from the Quran. It says, "Ya'maluna ma yasha'u min mahariba wa tamasila wa jifanin kal jawab wa qudur al-rasiyat." So these are the things that they would be made by these jinn that were employed by him. But then look what the Quran says: "I'malu ala Dawood ash-shukra wa qalilum min ibadi ash-shakur." And after describing that this is what they would do, these are the feats that they would do, the Quran says, "Act with gratitude, house of David." I mean, these words would not have been there had drawing pictures and sculptures would be a negative thing. So after using these things, after describing these things, the Quran has actually said that house of David, give thanks to God. Be grateful to God that you are doing such feats, you are making such wonderful things. And then it, of course, longingly says that few people thank God. So basically, it's a skill, it's an art, it's a prowess which people are blessed with. And when Solomon was able to do this, the Quran actually said that house of David, you should thank God for this. So had there been something wrong about it, the Quran would have been the first to point this out. The Quran would have been the first to say that, well, this was not something praiseworthy done by a prophet of God. And yes, in fact, a prophet of God would never have gone to do such things, let alone being contradicted on them. So why would he even indulge in those things? So you can clearly see that this was what the case. And there are people who think that, well, if the portrait and picture making issue is not discussed in the Quran, and the Quran is praising Solomon for this, then, well, he's not a follower of the Muhammadan Sharia, and he had his own Sharia, and therefore, if these pictures and portraits were allowed in his Sharia, so what? Because we as Muslims are not followers of his Sharia. Now, this is a very, very weak argument, because you see, as far as morality is concerned, as far as moral right and wrong are concerned, which of course the Quran or religions portray, they never change. The Sharia does not change in their matter. So if something is vulgar, if something is polytheistic, whether it's the Solomon's religion or religion which is followed by Muslims later on, of course the origin of all these religions is the same. But let's, for the sake of argument, look at these people who say that if Solomon was allowed, he was only allowed because, well, he was a previous prophet, but Muslims are not allowed. But as I said, this is a weak argument, because if something is allowed and the nature of that allowance relates to polytheism or, let's say, vulgarity, then it cannot be that should be allowed in one Sharia and not allowed in the other Sharia. So the first thing that we come that comes to our notice is that this prohibition of portraits and pictures is not mentioned anywhere in the Quran. Not only it's not mentioned, it praises the endeavor of Solomon, who actually employed the jinn to make these portraits, pictures, and sculptures and decorate the temple, which is, of course, a house of God. So remember, the temple is not an ordinary building, it's the house of God. It was the house of God which was being built and embellished and adorned and decorated with these pictures. And the Quran actually praised them, and we have just seen their description from the Bible as well. So now comes the question that what exactly is the meaning of the narrative, which I'm just going to cite before you, which actually says that prohibition or depicts the prohibition of portraits. So let us see. So this narrative is reported by Abdullah ibn Umar. He says, "Indeed, creators of such pictures will be punished on the day of judgment, and it would be said to them, inject life in what you have created." So very carefully consider the words once again of this narrative. The words are, indeed, creators of such pictures. Such pictures. This is the stress that has to be understood. Such pictures. So it's not all pictures. It's such a particular kind of pictures that is being referred to. So the Prophet said, indeed, creators of such pictures will be punished on the day of judgment, and it will be said to them, inject life in what you have created. So, if this background is understood, that the Prophet is actually speaking of certain type of pictures, he's not talking about all pictures. So, there were certain pictures in Arabia which the idol worshippers, they would build or make and regard them to be a manifestation of their gods. And they would say that these are deities and they are alive and they fulfill the wishes that would be presented before them. So they would make these pictures, think that they are alive, they would prostrate before them, they would worship them, and they would think that they are alive, and they would actually ask for their wishes to be fulfilled before them. So it is towards such pictures that the Prophet is telling us that, well, pictures that you make of your deities that you worship, and you worship because you think that they are living beings. How, whereas they are, of course, just idols, and these are just pieces of scrap or iron or stone that you're making. So the narrative is telling us that the idol worshippers on the day of judgment would be asked to inject life in these miserable stones who to them were alive, but of course they were not alive. So it's like adding insult to injury, that such people on the day of judgment would be said that, well, you worship these stones and these idols because you thought that they are living and they grant you your wishes. Now you inject life in them. So instead of understanding this narrative on the basis of the fact that this last sentence, inject life in them, doesn't mean that only pictures of non-living beings are allowed and pictures of living beings are disallowed. This has been grossly misunderstood. It's not that the Prophet is saying that pictures that are living or of living beings are disallowed. All that he is saying is that in the times, his own times, people would be worshipping certain deities, or the mushrikun, or the idol worshippers, and they would think that these deities or these stones or these sculptures or whatever they would make, these structures, they are living beings. So basically, if we sum up, we can clearly see that the Prophet is referring to a certain type of sculpture or picture or pictures or portraits, which were the pictures and portraits and sculptures of idols of certain deities that were worshipped in his own times, and which were thought to be living. And that he said that, well, this is how you would be punished on the day of judgment, that you regarded them to be living. Now you would be asked to make them, to inject life in them and create them. So we can see that how such big confusion has arisen, that as far as the issue of pictures and portraits is concerned, it is only those pictures, portraits, and sculpture which stand forbidden, which actually are the pictures and portraits of idols or of deities which the Arabs worship. These are not ordinary pictures. These are not pictures of you and me or our family or any other living being for the purpose of amusement or maybe historically preserving them. These are the pictures and portraits of idols who are be worshipped. So, in fact, what the Prophet was doing when he was prohibiting these pictures, he was actually acting on the commandment of the Quran that all aspects of polytheism must be done away in the land of Arabia. And that is precisely why, when Mecca was conquered, all the idols they were ripped off, they were chopped off, and they were destroyed by Ali Radhiyallahu anhu at the behest of the Almighty. So basically, the the first and the foremost message of the Quran is monotheism. You cannot be a polytheist. And these idols, or these the pictures basically that were being made in those times, were the pictures of the idols and the of those deities which people worshipped. So we can sum up today that only pictures, only portraits or sculptures which are basically of idols which are worshipped is or should be disallowed or are disallowed. Other than that, pictures which are made of ourselves, of our families, of our gatherings that we take, or maybe going out. These are all normal pictures. For them, the rule is very simple, that they should not be vulgar in any way, which is, of course, another commandment of the Quran, that vulgarity has to be abstained from. And the second, of course, is that the pictures or whatever pictures we make should not be of deities and idols. That is all. Other than that, any other portrait picture, whether of living being or whether of a non-living being, has no prohibition at all in the Quran. So, as far as artists are concerned, as far as people who are sculptors, they could rest. They can rest in at ease and breathe easily. That for them, this is not something which has been prohibited. It has been erroneously understood to be prohibited. And I can sum up my this whole talk by also pointing this out, that this is the stance of Islam is same towards all fine arts. So these are the two very prominent exemplars of fine arts: music and portrait making. Regarding both these, we have seen that it is the misunderstanding of the content of certain ahadith or narratives of the Prophet which has resulted in this notion that music or picture making is prohibited. Otherwise, we can clearly see that as far as music is concerned, it is only vulgarity or something which is against monotheistic notions is prohibited. And exactly the same in the case of pictures as well. Pictures and portraits, which are idols, I mean, which are portraits of idols and pictures that are worshipped, that is something which was disallowed because, of course, this is in line with the Quranic directive of doing away with polytheism. And obviously, along this would also be those pictures which are vulgar and indecent. So, other than that, any form of pictures, whether you paint them, whether you sketch them, whether you take them from a camera, they hold no label of prohibition. So, I now end my talk here. And this is the last of the series of our misconception lectures. Inshallah, we'll resume our textual study from next week. And in Ramadan, we'll have a special series in which we'll have Quran and Ramadan. This would be every day for 30 to 35 minutes. Inshallah, the schedule will be up before you very soon. But if regarding today, we have just ended this series. And if you have any questions regarding today's session, please raise them.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Our first question asks, how can we be sure that these verses from Psalms and Solomon are authentic compared to hadith books where were recorded with such efforts and are not safe from being tampered?
Because we are reading these books in the light of the Quran. The Quran, I mean, wherever these books they go against the Quran, of course, that is something we will not accept. But we are just, trying to see what the Quran has said. In both these aspects, we refer to the Psalms of David and we've referred to the Proverbs of Solomon or the Book of Solomon, which is portrayed in Kings 1 and Hiskiel. You'll find them that both are basically explaining what the Quran has said. So the Quran, what one instance has said that David would sing songs, and we've just seen the details of those singing songs in the Psalms of David. So it's just like referring to something which the Quran is referring. And then again, in the case of pictures and portraits, the Quran is actually praising Solomon for decorating his temple with these pictures and portraits and sculptures. But it has, not given details. So for details, we are just looking up the Old Testament. So all that we are doing is that we are picking up a certain verse of the Quran and going to the Old Testament to look up these details.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Rafia Khwaja, you're up next. Please go ahead.
Dr. Shehzad, very often when you're talking to people and you have a discussion, they start quoting the hadith. And when you say, how do you know it's in line with the Quran, then the big argument occurs and they said, well, you don't believe in the Bukhari and Tirmidhi and all. So how does one avoid this and say, okay, I just believe what the Quran says. I'm not saying I don't believe the hadith, but I am wary of the hadith. But is there any way of trying to convince people, or you just back out and say, okay, you want to follow the hadith, you follow the hadith, I'll just follow the Quran?
I think we just discussed this earlier on as well, and I gave you this suggestion that always pick and choose people for discussing things. You don't need to discuss everything with all kinds of people. And not only hadith, there are verses of the Quran, there are other contents of religion which are very, very, very precarious or very, very sensitive. So I think unless people who are in front of you, they are open-minded, they would like to discuss things on the basis of arguments. If you have such people before you, you can go ahead and discuss with them. But mostly people are controlled by their emotions. They have not given clear thought to what they believe in. So they believe in things what they have heard from their parents or from the society at large. So for such instances, I think it is better to either divert the the conversation topic to some other area, or just stay quiet. You should only discuss religion with people who are willing to discuss religion on the basis of reasoning.
But Dr. Shehzad will agree that a lot of people do believe in the hadith and they get very offended when you try to argue, and they always make you feel, how can you be a Muslim and not believe in the hadith?
I think that
So
all of us
ये
should believe in the
problem हो
hadith.
जाता.
You see, the problem is that the hadith is the knowledge of the Prophet which is transferred to us, and as such, it has a lot of pearls of wisdom in it. The only thing is that because it has been reported through a human chain, and people can misunderstand. So therefore, what we advise people to say is that we have to weigh these ahadiths in the scales of calibration which have been suggested by the muhaddisun and the scholars of hadith themselves. So it is not that we are rejecting ahadith in any way. We find that there is a lot of wisdom in them. It is only the fact which our scholars say that they say that yahtamilu sidq wal kizb, which means that a narrative can be true and it can be false. So what we do is we try to judge the veracity of a narrative, and this is what all the muhaddisun do. And because today people have become stagnated and they give superhuman veneration to certain personalities, that it becomes very difficult for them to digest. Again, I would say that please pick and choose your audience.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Our next question comes from Shaban Ansari. Please go ahead.
ये ऐसा महसूस होता है कि जैसे हमारी उलमा की अक्सरियत जो है वो इस टॉपिक पे यानी म्यूजिक सॉन्ग्स इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स पर या तो कंफ्यूज्ड है या बुखारी में होने के बावजूद वो उनकी कोशिश ये होती है कि ज्यादा पता ना चल सके लोगों को या लोगों को इससे दूर ही रखें, मतलब उनको ये पसंद नहीं आता कि ये म्यूजिक या सॉन्ग्स के मुताबिक, कभी वो कहते हैं कि वो तो लौंडियां गा रही थी या वो छोटी बच्चियां थी, वो तो कभी कभी की बात थी, मतलब उनका ये है कि दूर ही रखा जाए लोगों को इंस्ट्रूमेंट और म्यूजिक से। तो इसकी क्या वजह लगती है आपको?
This is because there are a number of spurious and inauthentic narratives of the Prophet which say that music is prohibited, is haram. None of them is actually, except very few of them, one of them I just cited, stands to the test of historical criticism. Most of them are extremely weak narratives, but there are a large number of narratives. So it's basically the proliferation of these large number of narratives, which are in themselves weak, but because they are very widely circulated, that generally people think that this is the case. And also, if you would like to know that Ibn Hazm, for example, he has shown to us that almost none of these narratives is authentic. I mean, this is his own opinion. We can look in detail at what he has said. But I think the reason being that a lot of weak narratives they are circulating in large numbers, and none of these narratives is authentic. And there is a general perception which was built very earlier on in our own history, and that perception is being carried forth every generation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Our next question asks, is Zabur Psalms and is Injil Bible? Can you specifically tell us what?
Zabur is the Psalms. Injil is the Gospel. So Gospels, yeah. So Injil is the Arabic word for Gospels. The Gospel is a Greek word, and Injil is the Arabic word. They refer to the book that was revealed to Prophet Jesus.
Thank you.
Let me also clarify that although this book does not exist, so today the Injil that we have today, these Gospels, they are basically historical accounts that were written for the first time more than 70 years after the departure of Jesus from this world. So basically, these are historical accounts that were written by later people.
Thank you for that clarification, Dr. Saleem. The next part asks, can you specifically tell us what parts of the other three books are relevant for us to read, or should we be reading all of them?
What part of the what?
The other three books, religious texts.
I think you should read all the parts. If you read them in the light of the Quran, you'll understand where the Quran is differing from them. And wherever you don't understand, or you can always look up the comparative text. There are a lot of websites which place these texts side by side. And I have referred this as well earlier to you as well, that there is a tafsir book available in Urdu and English language. It's in 4 volumes. It is by Abdul Majid Daryabadi. He belonged to India. Later on, he came to Pakistan as well. So he wrote a commentary on the Quran, and he cited every comparable and related Bible verse with those Quranic verses. And it's a very handy tafsir book which students of the Quran should have, because if they want to look at the Bible, all parallel verses of every verse of the Quran were cited by him in his commentary. So it is a very good compendium and a very good handbook, I would say, for all students of the Quran and the Bible. For this is a way in which they can study the similar content of both these scriptures at one place.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. I'm going to type out the name in the chat too, so keep an eye out for that for the participants that are interested. Nagir Tony, please go ahead.
Thank you. Dr. Ahmed, Doctor, my question is related to this lecture, that the way Al-Mawrid and you people are trying to convey the message of misconception and other stuff. Do you realize that the people who are believing your misconception, they are very limited, and the number of people who are coming out from the madrasas and everything from everywhere with misconception, they are very large in number. So do you have any plan or any master plan so that this message can be rolled out in the community, so that instead of talking to individuals, the message will be spread out very quickly, and the things will be sorted?
I think that the only way to penetrate the minds of people is to educate them at different levels. So we have 3 levels of education that we have envisaged at the platform of Al-Mawrid. So one relates to the education. When I talk of education, I of course refer to religious education. So one is at the level of youngsters or the young minds. For that, we have a very calibrated syllabus which covers the early years. For youngsters from age 8 to 18, they can go through various courses and educate themselves on the Quran and Islam. So this is what we call the Sunday school. So this is a program meant for the younger generation. Then we have a program for adults, which is in the form of various talks, various courses, various seminars, various Q&A sessions, which people like you who would like to know about religion in more detail. So for them, we offer such programs. And the third string in this regard is regarding making scholars of Islam or producing scholars of Islam. So that's another string that we are trying to initiate. And so it is basically on these 3 planes. Yes, our voice is very feeble, and the candle that we have lit has also a very small flame, but we are trying to do our best. And I think that is what is required from us. And we do hope that if people if they agree with what we are doing, if they support us, if they come forward, inshallah, slowly but surely, it might take some time. But hopefully, inshallah, we are trying our best, and we do hope for the best as well.
So how you suggest a person who are sitting at home and just burning his heart about all these misconceptions, they can participate?
I think the best thing is that he could, first of all, understand religion himself. If he is understanding religion at one level, he should go to the next level. And the next level for a common person is, as much as he can, he should learn Quranic Arabic, so that the Quran or the Book of God is open to him. He can read it without a translation, because the impact the Quran will have without a translation on your heart and your mind is manifold. It cannot be described, actually. And that will make you a better person, because when God talks to you directly and you receive God's message directly on your heart, you become very motivated and you become a better person. So I think this is the thing that you can do vis-a-vis improving your religious knowledge. And then, of course, through your finances, you can support various projects that the institutes are offering. We have presence in 5 countries now, in fact, spanning 3 continents. So whichever city or whichever country that you are in, or whichever continent that you are in, and it has a modern presence there, if you can support any program that they are offering through your finances, that is also something that you can do. And any volunteer work that you can do, which of course is also something which is very, very appreciative of. We would like that the people should do that. And these voluntary works are displayed on our websites. If you can spend, maybe give time, maybe give your skill, maybe get involved in furthering this message. So these are all the things that you can do as a package.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Sulaiman Ahmed, please go ahead.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम डॉक्टर साहब, मेरा सवाल ये है कि आपने बहुत पहले गांधी साहब से सवाल किया था कि मुसलमानों की दोबारा बारी कब आएगी, हुकूमत कब करेंगे पूरे दुनिया पर। तो उस पर गांधी साहब ने कहा था कि मुसलमानों की बारी गुजर गई है, अब याफस की औलाद से लोग आएंगे और वो दीन का काम करेंगे। तो अभी देखा जाए तो डॉक्टर साहब, पाकिस्तानी लोग जो हैं, हिंदुस्तान जो है, यहाँ से लोगों ने अभी तक तो हुकूमत की ना पूरी दुनिया पर, तो इनकी भी तो बारी अभी आनी है ना। और अगर आ गई है और याफस से लोग आएंगे, याफस की औलाद से लोग आएंगे, तो अगर एक आदमी कहता है कि मैं दीन की खिदमत करना चाहता हूँ और मैं चाहता हूँ कि वहां जाकर लोगों को तबलीग करे, तो उसको किस तरफ जाना चाहिए, किस इलाके की तरफ जाना चाहिए, इसको मुल्क का नाम पे?
You see, I mean,
कोशिश कीजिएगा कि उर्दू में बताएं, क्योंकि यहाँ पर ना कुछ ऐसे सुनने वाले हैं जो इंग्लिश नहीं जानते। मेहरबानी।
Okay, I'll answer your question in Urdu. तो देखें, ये जो गांधी साहब ने बताया है कि बारी बारी अल्लाह ताला ने सब कौमों को मौका दिया, ये एक ग्रैंड स्केल पे बताया है दुनिया की तकसीम। ये जो इंडिया और पाकिस्तान है, ये तो उसकी एक छोटी सी तकसीम है। जो बड़ी तकसीम है वो शुरू होती है हज़रत नूह की औलाद से। जब तूफ़ान नूह आया तो दोबारा से जब दुनिया के उस खित्ते को आबाद किया गया जहाँ पे तूफ़ान आया था, तो उनके 3 बेटे हैं जिनसे ये नस्ल इंसानी फिर आगे चली है। और उन तीनों बेटों को मौका दिया गया, उनकी नस्लों को, कि वो हुकूमत करें। तो जो 3 बेटे हैं वो साम, हाम और याफिस हैं। तो सबसे पहले जो हाम हैं, उनकी औलाद को मौका दिया गया कि वो दुनिया के की मुल्क को चलाएं, दुनिया की रियासत को चलाएं। और ये जो आप अफ्रीकी देखते हैं इस वक्त, जो बड़े बड़े कद के लोग हैं, उनका ख़ास रंग है, ये सबसे पहले ये थे जो कि आप समझ लीजिए कि दुनिया पे हुकूमत करते थे। उनके बाद फिर सामी जो हैं, उनको ये मौका दिया गया। और ये सामी ये वो हैं जिनसे हज़रत इब्राहीम की नस्ल चली है। और एक ख़ास मौके पे जाके जब नबी सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम के 1000 साल तक के बाद तक एक उरूज की उन्होंने कैफियत पाई है। उनके 1000 साल के बाद फिर उनके यहाँ भी ज़वाल आना शुरू हुआ। और अब तीसरी जो नस्ल है या तीसरी जो बारी है वो याफिस की है। तो ये जो बारियों का सिलसिला है, ये बिल्कुल कदीम तारीख की तरतीब के साथ है। उसके अंदर इन तीनों जो बड़ी तकसीमें हैं, यानी सामी, हामी और याफिस की औलाद के अंदर, ये फिर सब कैटेगरीज हैं। ये जितनी भी और अकवाम आप देख रहे हैं वो उनके अंदर से पैदा हुई हैं। तो आप उनकी बारी का ना इंतजार कीजिए, यानी वो बारियां तो वो हर एक की जिम्नी आएगी। ये बारियां असल में साम और हाम और याफिस की औलादों के लिहाज से आई हैं। तो 2 की बारियां गुजर गई हैं, सामियों की और हामियों की बारियां गुजर गई हैं। अब याफिस की बारी है। और पिछले 1000 साल से आप देखिए कि उन्हीं का उरूज है। और वो कौन है? वो ये मंगोल्स और ये चीनी लोग हैं, चपटी नाक वाले जो जिक्र आता है रवायतों में। तो ये जो येलो रेसेस हैं, ये जर्द नस्लें हैं जिनको बाइबल कहती है। बेसिकली ये तीसरी बारी इनकी है। और याफिस इन्हीं की औलाद है। याजूज और माजूज जो हैं, ये उनके पोते हैं याफिस के। और इन्हीं के नाम से उनकी जो ट्राइब है उनका नाम रखा गया है। तो याजूज और माजूज जो हैं याफिस की औलाद हैं, उनके पोतों में से हैं। तो अब उन्हीं की बारी है, क्योंकि बाकी दोनों अपनी बारियां पुर कर चुके हैं। अगर वो मुसलमान हो जाते हैं तो ये अलग बात है, और उसके नतीजे में ज़ाहिर है मुसलमानों को गलबा हो सकता है। लेकिन जो उनका नैरेटिव है गांधी साहब का, वो बुनियादी तौर पे इस पर है कि अगर अब बारी जिसकी रह गई है वो याफिस है, और जिनको आप याजूज और माजूज भी कह सकते हैं क्योंकि वो उन्हीं की औलाद के हैं। सो अगर वो उनका राइज होगा तो जिस मजहब की वो लंबरदार होंगे उसका राइज होगा। अगर वो मुसलमान हो जाते हैं हादसतन या प्लानिंग के जरिए से, तो मुसलमानों को दोबारा भी अरूज हासिल हो सकता है।
मगर डॉक्टर साहब, अगर एक आदमी चाहता है कि ये जो मसला कश्मीर है, फिलिस्तीन है, शाम और यमन में मुसलमानों के साथ जो कुछ हो रहा है, अगर एक आदमी चाहता है कि इसके लिए इसका खात्मा किया जाए, इस मसले को हल किया जाए, तो वो उसको क्या चाहिए, कहाँ जाके वो दावत तबलीग का काम शुरू करे कि
उसको ये समझना चाहिए कि उसके ये बस के काम नहीं है। ये अल्लाह ताला ने जिम्मेदारी नहीं डाली कि वो मसला कश्मीर को हल करे। अल्लाह ताला ने उस पर जिम्मेदारी ये डाली है कि वो अपना मसला हल करे और अपने माहौल में जिन लोगों को वो नेकी की तलकीन कर सकता है उनका मसला हल करे। ये जिम्मेदारी अकवाम की और उम्मत की है, जो जिनको आप कहते हैं ना कलेक्टिव जिम्मेदारी। यानी ऐसे ही आप समझिए कि हुक्मरान अगर होगा तो जुम्मे की नमाज होगी या जिहाद होगा। अगर हुक्मरान नहीं है तो आम आदमी ये नहीं कह सकता जी कि मैं उठूंगा और जाके जत्था बना के हमला कर दूंगा। तो हम आम लोग हैं, हमारी जो जिम्मेदारी वो समझनी चाहिए क्या है। हमारी जिम्मेदारी ये है कि हम अपने आप को ठीक करें, अपने माहौल को ठीक करें, और उस कॉन्सेप्ट को बेहतर करने की कोशिश करें जो जिसको हम मजहब का कॉन्सेप्ट कहते हैं। और अगर आपकी आवाज ऐसी है तो अपने हुक्मरानों को इस बात की तरफ तवज्जो दिलाएं कि आपकी जिम्मेदारी है कि आप उम्मत के मसाइल को हल करें। उम्मत के लेवल के जो मसाइल हैं वो रियासत के हुक्मरान हल करते हैं, ऐसे ही कि जैसे रियासत की जिम्मेदारी है जिहाद करने की। तो अगर रियासत जो है वो जिहाद नहीं कर रही और कहीं पर जुल्म हो रहा है तो दिल तो कुड़ेगा हमारा, लेकिन हम कर कोशिश सकते हैं। यानी हमें तो जो लोग कर सकते हैं उनको तवज्जो दिलानी है कि आप अपनी जिम्मेदारी समझें। तो वो अगर अपनी जिम्मेदारी नहीं समझ रहे तो हमें अपनी आवाज को और तेज करना चाहिए, अपनी लय को और बढ़ाना चाहिए, लेकिन अमलन हम कुछ नहीं कर सकते इसमें, क्योंकि वो जिम्मेदारी हमारी है नहीं। हमारी जिम्मेदारी है अपने आप को दुरुस्त करना और अपने माहौल में इस दुरुस्ती की कोशिश करना। और
तो
आप ये भी
हमें
अंदाजा लगाइए कि हर शख्स अगर अपनी जिम्मेदारी को संभालना शुरू कर दे तो ये कहाँ तक बात जा सकती है।
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. We're all out of time, unfortunately, but we have 2 more questions remaining. So, should we take them or?
Yeah, please,
Okay.
please go ahead.
For the remaining questions, please try to keep them very concise. Bismillah Tirmizi Ahmed, you're up next. Please go ahead.
Assalamualaikum, Dr. Saleem. So I was the one who asked you about the Bible question. So basically, जो Bible है वो history book है, इंजील जो है वो Gospels हैं, Psalms, ज़बूर है और तौरात है. तो हमें पढ़ना क्या है? पूरी Bible पढ़नी है.
Let me clarify. Bible, I mean, Injil and Gospels are the same.
Okay.
And, I mean, I was just trying to clarify the nature of Injil and Gospels, that they are basically historical records of Prophet Jesus' teachings. So that is just they are not books of, I mean, they are not, the nature of Gospels today is that they are regarded, they are basically records of what Jesus did by people who came later. So it's not that, I mean, it has divine content all the way. Yes, there is one thing which I have referred to earlier also. It's called the Red Letter Bible. If you type in your Google, you'll get that Red Letter Bible, which is a Bible, or which is the Injil, in which the speech of Jesus, whatever he said, is just recorded, and there's no history there.
Okay,
so that
got
is,
it.
yeah. So I mean, Gospel and Injil is the same, but the nature of the Gospel and Injil is that they are historical records of teachings of Jesus.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Shazia Khan, you're up next. Please go ahead.
Yes, Assalamualaikum, Doctor Sir. My question is about something personal. So it's in these days, like Pakistani clothes, most of them have pictures on them. Birds, animals, like it's a Mughal architecture or something. And we're told not to wear them if we're praying, like when we're doing salah, not to wear anything with eyes. That's what I was told. What is the truth about, like, is it okay for us to pray or do salah if we're wearing something with pictures? And does it make any difference if it has eyes or no eyes?
It doesn't make any difference. Pictures at all, whatever you wear pictures or not, it is absolutely fine. You see, in the times of the Prophet, we do find that there was one instance in which he got distracted by certain curtains who had prints on them. And while he was praying, those curtains were hung in front of him, and he could not concentrate. So he asked his household or his wife, one of his wives, that please remove these curtains because they are causing this distraction. I mean, he did not say these words distraction, but we know from the context. So today, you can wear or pray in any environment which is not distracting you, so that the purpose is to focus yourself on the prayer. So whether your own clothes have eyes or they have prints or whatever they display is fine. The thing is that the focus of the prayer, whatever breaks that focus, whether it's your own clothes or whether it's the surroundings that you are praying in, those surroundings and those clothes should be avoided. And I don't think that there is any such thing today, because whenever you are praying, you're always concentrating on the prayer mat or you have your eyes closed.
Is it the same thing with praying in front of a mirror or praying in front of a picture, as long as it is distracting? So is that the basic concept?
I mean, it's, as I said,
because our intention is not to pray for that picture. We're not bowing down.
Of course, I mean,
picture.
As I said, if you're not prostrating before that picture, so if you're praying in a room which has pictures, it is absolutely fine, because you see, even if you have a picture, it's not the picture of any deity. It's maybe a picture of your father or your mother or your family. So
or sometimes if you're outside and you're praying and you have no control over hanging a towel on top of the picture, sometimes you're like, obviously,
I mean, you don't need to hang that towel on the picture. Why would you do that? You see, because
that's what we're told. That's
people generally do. So that is not required in the first place. Only, I mean, as I said, prostrating before deities, which the Arabs used to do, because they would paint those pictures that would reflect their deities. So the Prophet was not actually referring to any pictures. He was basically referring to those idols, because those pictures represented those idols. So therefore he said that don't prostrate before them. So it's not a question of doing, I mean, if you are in a room full of pictures, if you're not distracted by them, that is fine. So the only thing that should bother you is distraction. Picture in itself is nothing. I mean, it could be of your father, mother, of the family, of anyone.
Yeah. Jazakallah. Dr. Saab, should I just say thank you? You make life so much easier and you make things so much clearer every time I ask a question or any other questions you answer.
I think it's not me.
Thank
It's
you.
not, I have nothing to say. Basically, it's the beauty of our religion that we all marvel
Yeah.
at. So
Yeah,
let's
but
thank
we
God.
don't
Let's thank
realize
God for
it. We
that.
don't understand it. Thank you for spreading the message. Thank you. Jazakallah.
Okay.
I couldn't have said it in better words than Shazia. So thank you, Shazia. And with that, we're out of time for today. Thank you very, very much, Dr. Saleem, for all the hard work that you put into these sessions. And thank you to all the participants who keep coming through every week and asking really useful questions and helping us learn from each other. So thank you all so much. And inshallah, see you all next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.